what we're going to do is I will start with the overview of the sessions and objectives that we're going to deal with. In fact, you've all had a chance, because you're all quick readers, to read the slides anyway. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Edmund Forry, who will do the detail of the session, so we can answer the detailed questions. And we've got a lot of slides in there to give you an overview, but what we will try to do is go through at some pace to give you time for questions at the end. Very conscious that if you look at the weighty document, and Edmund's got a copy of the latest one to wave at you, you say, well, where do I start? Where do I make my contribution? I think, in essence, that's what we'd like to try and guide you to, with an overview of where your time is best focused. So I'm going to start with a few comments, then leave Edmund to talk about the detail of it, and then come back to the tips that you were looking for at the end in terms of where to focus effort and some discussions about that. I think it's important, however, that if we just talk about the national contract as a contracting process, it isn't that. It is the way that you document what are your commissioning intentions, and that it's the way you translate what you want to do as a commissioner in what you require your providers to do and you manage them to do. And it's that series of translation is the medium that you use the contract for. That is the tool that we're talking about. So I think that one. And then we will have a session on AWP, because that becomes very much, if we look at the whole landscape of contracting, a new emerging, not alternative model, but complementary model, when you've done the provider development to have yourself the providers who are capable of delivering and operating in an AWP market. So, in essence, why do you need to know about it? I think the point that you're looking for is that with your new role that you will have, part of that landscape will be a fixed what they're calling model contracts at present. They are likely to be an evolution of the national standard contracts that we have at present. The word model is supposed to suggest is that there may be more freedom locally, I think. I think there will always be a balance in national contracts between the extent, and Edmund's going to talk about this in more detail as we go on, between what you mandate to ensure national consistency and the same patient experience wherever you are, and a baseline of performance, and the extent to which you have a local model of contracting. I think it's important, just as a context, to think that national contracting is probably only 4 years old in the NHS in terms of a national model of contracting, 4 or 5 years old. I think, yes, that's right. So it's actually in its infancy. You've had people who have been contracting in other areas for years. Well, if you look at your own GP contracts, they've been going for years, they've evolved through various sets. But national contracting, as opposed to various SLAs, has not been around for very long. So we are still learning an awful lot. And the learning is both from a commissioner perspective, but it's also from a provider perspective as well. And so I think in both those cases, there will still be an evolution of the contracts during this period. And in fact, we're just entering a period where I think we'll move from the first phase of of the national standard contract, which is what we are on at present, through to more, I think the phrase I've heard colleagues say is sort of more of standard terms and conditions for contracting. I think that's good, because what it'll leave you to do is not worry about the legal stuff at the front, but focus much more on those key areas where you as commissioners can make a difference in the process, which we'll talk about both now and a bit later. But I wanted to end my section, so we've already made some progress this evening, by looking at giving that focus and that duty on GP consortia to make savings and efficiency and improvement. What are the areas that really will make a difference in the contracting process? I've just highlighted 3, which will be a recurrent theme. But if you're going to do nothing else, there are 3 areas that I'd pick up. The first one is actually the core question of service specifications. And I think last week you did some detailed work on diabetes as an area. And I think one of the core weaknesses we have, you can have the strongest standard set of contracts, but unless you know what the service specification is to the level, not necessarily of granularity, but the clarity of outcomes you're seeking to achieve and you're managing the provider to deliver, you won't get anywhere. You can have the best levers and tips to manage it, but unless you've got a service specification that you know what it means, they know what it means, and you're both working towards the same objective, you don't get that, you won't get improved performance. And that then goes alongside service specifications. I think not uniquely in health, but it's an area that health needs to recognise. There's something called SDIPs, which are service development improvement plans, because the recognition that is that even within a year, within 6 months, services need to evolve and change to meet either local demographic change, population needs, patient needs. You need to have a dynamic between the service specification and an effective sense of service development and improvement throughout the life of a contract. The second area is, in order to do that effectively, looking at your activity and quality management. And particularly the activity management may be the current area, but I think quality management is equally important, and you have a tremendous role to play in that. And then thirdly, we've talked about pricing, sanctions and incentives. Now currently pricing is a major factor, looking at QIP initiatives and other areas like that. Pricing and incentives is how I'd look at it in terms of where you can incentivise quality through Sequin and the like. So there are a number of key areas, and understanding the value of the incentives you're offering as well as the sanctions that may exist. It's always that balance, carrot and stick, call it what you like, and making sure where they are, where they sit, and also how realistic both of them are. Okay, I think that's where I'm going to hand over to Edmund, who actually knows what's in the contract. There you are, Edmund.
Thanks.